it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Butterfly Kisses, Scootin' By, Porcupine for You, You Autumn Know, Scripty Autumn Sentiments, Let's Go Nuts, You Are Sublime, and I Like You a Loddle. So I have stamped those images out on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. And since I'll be coloring foxes, I'm going to flip to my coloring chart that I have created coloring foxes and choose one of these to do for today. And the one that I decided to go with was the YR12, YR14 and YR18 combination. I just thought that that one would go the best with the color palette that I had in mind for today's card. This is my favorite of the 5 that I've done, but I think it's fun to try different combinations for different critters, just depending on the color palette that you are envisioning for your card. And if you're interested in that video, I have that in my Copic favorites playlist, along with a bunch of other critters as well, and I plan to continue adding to that playlist monthly. So for these foxes, I am starting with the YR18. For this first one, I started on the left-hand side since he's facing toward the right. So the shadows will fall on the back and the light will fall on the face. And then for the second fox, I'm going to flip it. So my shadows are going to be on the right side since she's facing left. And that way the light will still fall on her face. It's going to be a central light source, so the light will be in the center of the card. So once I have the shadows laid in with the YR18, I'm blending that out with the YR14. Just making sure to scrub over the edge of the previous shade. And then I will go in and fill the remaining white space on those areas with the YR12. I wanted to add some dark accents on the tips of the ears and on the front and back paws. So I'm going to do that by bringing in E44 and E47, and I'll keep the YR12 out to help me transition. But I am going to start with that E47 and add a little bit of that to the feet and the front paws and the tips of the ears, and then start to blend that out with the E44, just pulling that color into the orange colored areas. And once I have that done on both of these foxes, I'm going to go over the edge of that E44 with the YR12, just to help it blend into the orange that we've already done. Sometimes I leave little white socks on their paws, but today I just decided to go dark, and I really like how it turned out. I think that was a fun look. So moving on to the white parts of their bodies, I'm going to use E40 and E000. I'm going to feather in a little of that E000 first, but since it's kind of peachy toned, I just wanted to dilute it a little bit with the E40, which is a bit more muted. So I'm just going to blend over that with that shade and then leave the rest just the plain white cardstock for the highlight. And then I'll keep the E40 and bring in E44, and I'm going to do my mushroom stems and also the little dots. So the E41 first, and then blending out with the E40. And then I'm going to give my foxes some rosy cheeks with R11 and R20. A little R20 first on the cheek area, and then I just go around the edges of that with the R11. And then I'll switch to a red combo, and I'm going with more of a cranberry red for today's card. And I'm going to use R35, R37, and R39. I will do all of my mushrooms with this combo, starting with that R39 down at the bottom, and then blending up toward the top with the R37. And then I'll fill in with the R35. And then I'm also going to use these shades for some of my leaves. So I actually have a few additional leaves on a second piece of cardstock. It's the same leaves that you see here. I just needed more of them. So I'm going to color that off screen to save some time in the video, but I'm using the exact same combos that I'm going to show you here. So I did another one of the large leaves, and then I'll do one of the medium-sized leaves. Those are from Let's Go Nuts. The large leaves are from the Scripty Autumn Sentiments and You Autumn Know. And then also these super tiny leaves, these are from the Porcupine for You stamp set. So I'm just picking and choosing and making sure to do different varieties so that I have a good mix of all the different combos that I'll be introducing. Then I'm going to move on to a hot pink. I'm using RV13, RV14, and RV17. So for all of the leaves, I'm placing the darkest in the center where that veining is, and then blending toward the edges with the midtone, and then on the very tips I will use the highlight. So RV17 first, then the RV14, and then the RV13. And the reason I have both of the caps off on that RV13 is it's just a leaky marker, and so that helps equalize the pressure in the barrel, and it always saves me a lot of trouble if I just take off both caps on that one. So I'm going to do a few more of these leaves with the hot pink combo, and then I'm going to switch to a brighter orange. So the reason that I went with the shades that I did for the foxes is that I really wanted a dark, full, vibrant color, but I didn't want to go quite as bright as this combo, which is YR04, YR07, and YR09, because I knew I wanted to use that for the leaves. I wanted something that would match with the leaves, but also stand out a little bit. I wanted the foxes to look different than the colors that I used on the leaves. So I thought that this pairing went the best. So I'm just doing a few more of the leaves, again making sure to do some different sizes and varieties. We're going to have a whole bunch of different size leaves on this card, just for something fun. I wanted to have a scene that was a little bit more whimsical, so that's what I'm doing. And then I wanted one more combination. I felt like I just wanted something that kind of was between the red and the orange. So I went with R12, R14, and R17. And I'm going to do this last leaf on this sheet, but I still have a few on the second sheet, so there will be more in this combo. And I'm also going to do the leafy plants down at the bottom of the scene with this combo. So I'm starting with the R12 and just filling in the leaf completely. Then I'll come back in with the R14 and just add about half of the leaf with that, just adding a little dot there and just going back and forth. So the one on the left hand side is from the You Are Sublime stamp set, and the one on the right is the I Like You a Lot'll stamp set. And they have a little bit different of a direction that they're going, but also the top is different. And that's why I decided to use both, so that it looks like the same plant, but you know, it just has another variety of it, or another direction, another look to it. So then I just went in with the R17 and did a final dot there. And then for the grasses, I wanted to go with more of like a pale olive. So I used G40 with G94 and G99. And that is going to match the Distress Oxide inks that I'll be using. So just a quick layer of that, and then I'm going to grab a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and go over the eye of my fox that's open and trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm starting with a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock, and I am going to blend on a sky here, and I wanted the sky to kind of reflect the colors of the leaves. So I'm starting at the top with Seedless Preserves, and even though we don't have any purple leaves, when the Seedless Preserves is combined with Worn Lipstick, which is my next shade, these two kind of resemble those R30 shades that I used. I'll add a bit more of that Seedless Preserves to the top and increase that saturation. And then I'll switch to my third shade, which is going to be Spun Sugar. So I'm going to blend that on below the worn lipstick. And because that is such a light shade, it's going to kind of push that worn lipstick up a bit. And so I'm going to work my way back and forth between those to kind of bridge the transition a little bit better. You can see how much better that's looking once I add a little bit of the worn lipstick over the top of the Spun Sugar. Then I'll go back and add a bit more of that Seedless Preserves, and I'm going to pull it down the sides a little bit more, and then do the same with the worn lipstick. And then I'll go back to my Spun Sugar, and I'm going to bring that down a little bit farther because we're going to transition into our fourth shade, which is going to be Bundled Sage. So I wanted the ground to kind of almost blend in with the sky, so you're not quite sure where one ends and the next one begins. So I'm going to add that down toward the bottom first, and then I'll work my way up into that Spun Sugar, and I'm just going to be really careful when I blend those two. I wouldn't normally blend green with pink, but because that Spun Sugar is so light, it didn't really get very muddy at all. I was actually quite pleased with the transition between those two shades. So I'm adding a bit more of that Bundled Sage until I'm happy with it. And then I wanted to add some gold flecks. So I'm actually going to use this coppery tone because I think it looks so pretty for fall. This is from the Gansai Tambi Starry Colors. I just added a little bit of water and mixed that up. And then I'll tap that all over the background with a thin paintbrush. I'm going to set that background aside for now so it can start to dry, but we are going to come back to that in a minute. For now, I'm going to switch to the Spooky Forest backdrop, which I have also die cut out of a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface. I'm actually going to leave the die cut together for now because I think it's so much easier to blend your colors over it the way it is with all of the pieces kind of intact. Otherwise, the little grasses and branches can get bent very easily. So I added more of the Bundled Sage down at the bottom, and next I'm going to bring in some Vintage Photo. I'm going to add that to the top and the two sides. So I'm just making sure to work my way around that and kind of have a bit of an even coat all around. So if I darken it up on the right, then I'm going to darken it up on the top and on the left. And then I'm going to bring in some gathered twigs for the center part, just so it looks a little bit lighter, since as I mentioned, I wanted that central light source on the card. So I'll just add a little bit more of that Vintage Photo just to make sure that I have it at the saturation level that I was looking for. And then I'm going to press a little bit of the Vintage Photo onto an acrylic block and add a little bit of water to that, and I will do some splatter detail. I'm not going to do the metallic on the trees and the grass. I wanted it to be more of like a sparkly effect in the sky. So I'm going to just leave the outside with just the Vintage Photo, but I am going to add some of this to the background as well. So we'll have both the metallic and the brown on there, and I think it just adds a lot of the fall feel to it. So I'll set that aside to dry, and in the meantime I'm going to work on my sentiment. I'm just going to pop a piece of scrap cardstock in my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp the word fall from Scripty Autumn Sentiments in some Lawn Fawn walnut ink, and I will stamp that down twice to make sure it's nice and bold. I'll set that aside and I will die cut that out in just a bit, but I'm going to pop my background in my MISTI next, and I'm going to stamp the rest of the sentiment, which is the word hello, using VersaFine Onyx Black ink because this lays nicely over the Distress Oxides. And I'll set that aside and pop my card base in my MISTI, and that is going to be some craft cardstock from Lawn Fawn. And I will continue using that walnut ink, and I did Sending Happy Autumn Wishes Your Way from Scripty Autumn Sentiments, and then the little fox is from Really High Five, And I'm going to add another leaf to his hand. So I'm just going to position that where I want it and then stamp that down over top so it looks like he's kind of floating in the air holding onto that leaf. Now I'm ready to start assembling, so I will glue this background to my card front. So I'm just making sure to line that up at the corners and make sure it's on there nice and straight. Then I'm going to take my spooky forest backdrop and pop out all of the little pieces so that it reveals our frame. And then I'll flip that over and add some thin score tape to the back of some of those branches. I was trying to figure out the best way to adhere these leaves, and I thought this would be the easiest. So I'm just peeling off the release papers, and then I can bring in those leaves and start to add them behind those branches. So it's going to be a mix of all these different larger leaves, but I just want to have, you know, like a different variety of styles and colors on each side. So I'm making sure not to put two that are the same right next to each other, and also kind of just turn them in a slightly different direction, or, you know, whatever, to just make it look nice and full. So if two of the same color are looking, you know, too close together, then I'll make sure to separate them out by using a different style and color between them. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to keep working on this until I have that as full as I want it. So I'm just making some final adjustments there so that none of the stems of those leaves are showing. And once I'm happy with that, I will flip it over and add some Scotch 3M foam tape to the back. And I made sure that everything was really well supported, so I put plenty of foam tape on there. But I always like my cards to be well supported in case I want to mail them out, or in case I sell it and that person wants to mail it out, so that it doesn't arrive at the recipient all buckled and bent. So I'd rather not skimp on the foam tape and have my card arrive as it should look, as I intended it to look, than kind of be a little bit disappointing because, you know, it didn't fare well as it went through the mail. So I'm just peeling off the release papers for all of that, and then I'm going to line that up over the background. Make sure that I have that on there nice and straight, and then I'll pop that down into place. So now I'm ready to work on the rest of my scene. I'm going to start with my two foxes, since they are the star of the show, and I'm going to make sure I have them positioned how I want them, so that their tails are close to the edge of the tree but not touching, and I wanted that to be equal on both sides so that it looks well balanced. And then each of them are going to be kind of chasing after the leaves that are falling down from the tree. So I'll have that popped up as well. I'll put one in front of my boy fox, and then I'm going to put one in front of my girl fox, although there wasn't quite as much space there, so it is going to have to overlap his foot a little bit, but I thought that was okay. It just kind of adds to the scene and makes it look like things are falling behind and in front and all around. So once I have those situated, then I'm going to start working on the lower part of the scene, adding in those little viney plants and also my grasses, kind of visualizing how that is going to start coming together, and then I can glue those down into place. So I'll have two over on the right hand side and the larger tuft of grass, and then I'll have two over on the left hand side with the smaller tuft of grass. And then I'll balance that out by adding the larger cluster of mushrooms over on the left and the single mushroom over on the right. So I'm just kind of weighing the different visuals of each of the objects and trying to make sure that they're equal on both sides, even if the amount isn't equal. So we have the larger tuft of grass that takes up more room, but the smaller cluster of mushrooms will single mushroom, and then the larger cluster of mushrooms gets the smaller cluster of grass. So again, it's just about even. It evens things out. And then I'm just going around and adding in more of those leaves wherever I think they look good, tucking them behind some of the branches so that we have different layers of those leaves, not only all behind the branches, but some of them coming up in front. Again, just adding some more visual depth. And then I'll have the small trio of leaves is going to go over on the right hand side, and then the single leaf is going to go over on the left, and those will be on either side of that fall sentiment. Again, just adding to the balance since the word hello is on the left, so it just all kind of evens out. I'm going to add one more leaf over on that left hand side there. And then I realized that the two leaves that were that size were the same on the left, and then the other one was on the right. So I just swapped them so that we would have more variety. And I'll just add that with a bit of foam tape so that it's all on the same level with the rest of the leaves, since that's going to go over the sky. And I ended up with a few extra of those larger leaves, but that's fine. I'd rather have more ready to go and not use them than to not have what I need in the moment and have to stop and color and die cut. I did cut some tiny slivers of foam tape to go behind the top part of the F and A in the word fall. The rest is just going to get some liquid glue because it's going to overlap areas that are already popped up. And I will add that down at the bottom of my scene. And then I did a last little bit of rearranging there just to make the scene look more full. And I ended up swapping out some of the leaves just so that we would have another pop of orange down on the lower part or like the middle of the card there. And popped up another orange leaf for the left hand side. And then I'll take that red leaf and add that to one of the upper branches on the right. So all that remains is to add a little bit of glitter to this card. So I'm going to grab my Stardust Stickles and I will add a bit of that to each of the leaves wherever I can. Just right down the center of the larger leaves and then kind of at the base of the smaller leaves, so that everybody gets a little bit of sparkle. And that is going to finish up this card. So I will lift it up to the camera so you can see all of that sparkle and shine and all of the detail with the metallic watercolor, and of course another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I love foxes, so I had so much fun creating it. If you did like it, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted whenever I post new videos. The products I use will be listed and linked in the description bar below the video in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.